Get your copy of The Royal Mindset by using the link below.
Hello and welcome back to the third video in the Royal Mindset series, so TRM number 3. And today's video is basically one of the core concepts of the entire book. So I've written in one of the introduction chapters, I live a better and more fulfilled life than any king at any point in the history of mankind. And yes, this is a very kind of extreme and confusing kind of a statement, but it is nonetheless the case in my own humble opinion. So I think we as people in first world conditions in the 21st century do live much better lives than any king would have lived 500-600 years ago, or based in the history of humanity, not from like an ultimate power kind of like do as I say point of view, but more from like a personal autonomy, from like a personal like benefit, from a personal living standard point of view. And I've kind of created this table. Now this table basically has privileges that a king had versus compared directly to privileges that we have, and I think that the ones that we have are superior. So like a king would have had ultimate power perhaps, but he would have been limited within his own freedom, whereas people in the first world in places like America have got freedom. Basically they can do what they want, they can go where they want, nobody's going to really stop them or ask them any questions. We have this kind of mobility now where we can kind of do whatever we like, obviously within laws, but I think that's fair enough, right? A king would have had a castle. But if you look at these castles, yes, they're grand, majestic buildings, and you get the kind of awe factor from them, but they would have been kind of quite cold places. They would have been kind of drafty, a lot of them. They would have been damp. Whereas we have modern, warm, airtight homes, which really, in my opinion, like they're as good as these castles, if not better, from like a living standard point of view. A king would have had servants. We have machines, so like things that servants could have done, machines can do for us now. So we kind of have the same level of utility. Probably even better when it comes to agricultural stuff and industrial stuff, but from a personal point of view, like instead of having someone who's perhaps transporting the king by horse and cart, we have a car which can move faster, can move the way we want it to move, reacts the way we want it to react. So there's countless of examples, right? A king may have had riches, not that they would have been much good to an extent, because what do you buy once you already have everything as a king? But we have higher living standards, which a king couldn't really have been able to buy, no matter how rich he was. The king would have had advisors. We have things like libraries, the internet, a lot more concepts and theories at our fingertips than a king could really ever realistically have gotten near. Again, I said horse and carriage, but we've got cars, planes, trains, much faster, much quicker modes of transport, much more efficient, much more reliable, safer as well, probably as a whole. A king would have had things like jewels and jewellery, which we also have if we want to buy them. A king would have been leading in wars, who would have had this kind of glory, but I think what's better than war is peace, and most first world nations are at peace, thank goodness. And hopefully will continue to be so into the future as an average. A king would have had access to the best food of the day, so if there would have been like a fresh harvest, the king would have been the guy to get the best of the harvest and the best meats and stuff. But like we have much more variety, much more stable supplies from all over the continents, all over the world. We can have any kind of food we want, and it's in a supermarket 10 seconds down the road, fine, 2-3 minutes down the road, whatever, really close to you at prices that are really reasonable in most places. So again, we win there. The king would have had the best doctors, but back then half them would have been witch doctors. They wouldn't have been very reliable. Whereas now we've got the entire medical industry, for good or for worse. Obviously, not everything they do is perfect, but most of it is pretty good, especially that we're now exposed to less diseases thanks to things like cures and vaccines. So the king would have had maybe access to a few hundred of the best doctors all over his nation. We have access to the best medicines from the entire world. It's incomparable. A king, as king, would have been able to take a holiday and go travel to exotic places. It would take him much longer to get there. He wouldn't have been able to go to as far away places as nicely. We have faster mobility, more choice worldwide, and obviously an awful lot cheaper for us to travel somewhere, especially with low fare airlines and stuff. So really we have a lot more options in that. A king would have had access perhaps to glory in battle and that kind of thing. And we can kind of experience similar adventure without actually experiencing it for ourselves, in the sense that we can watch films. We have the ability to experience adventure in the sense that we can go and travel similarly. So there's kind of perhaps a similar combination there between the glory a king could have had and things that we can do today. A king could have inherited his castle, so inherited ownership of property, and we too can own property. We have the potential through work, through social mobility. So even though you could be born with nothing, you have the mobility, the possibility in the society to do so through the capitalist network. Of course, not everybody can do this and it won't work for everybody, but in theory, everybody can do it. This is an interesting one. The king would have had a castle bathroom, which if you've ever seen bathrooms in castles, they weren't exactly the most nicest thing, whereas we have superior modern sewage systems. I had a discussion with a friend before. If the sewage system were to collapse in a city, the city would go crazy, and I definitely think most people don't value how important the sewage system is. We won't go into it in detail, but definitely that's something that we have that is superior to what a king would have had. A king would have had a well and a stream for fresh water. We have pumped water directly into every single room, basically, in our apartments, in our houses. Clean water that we can drink and we can cook with and we can do so much with. Pumped into our houses. It's an inconceivable... There's a concept that wouldn't even have struck the minds of people hundreds of years ago. Like, it's just so amazing when you think about it. A king would have had candlelight at night time for reading. If you've ever tried to read a candlelight, I think you'll agree it's not the most pleasant compared to what we have now, like lights and bulbs. No comparison. Definitely we're winning there. A king would have had manpower and horsepower for power, essentially. But we have electricity, fuels, renewables, etc. Much more powerful, can do an awful lot more work for a lot less effort. A king would have had a bathtub. You see these kind of ideas of having like heated water poured into a bathtub. We have heated showers, even though I'm more for cold showers, but it's definitely a privilege we have is heated showers in most first world countries, probably all. The king would have had things like gold for maintaining his wealth, but we have things like consumer goods, investing, also gold. And then the king would have been perhaps the head of a religion, so the king would have been very involved with religion, but in the first world we have a lot more choice. We can decide what religion we're a part of, we can decide whether we belong to any religion at all, so we have a lot more freedom there again. So with these kind of points in mind, it's in my opinion very clear that any person living now lives a much better life than any king at any point in history, in my opinion. At least that isn't in the modern era. Like, we do live in the golden era of humanity, so we live lives better than kings. And this is a kind of a core concept in the Royle mindset. I mean, Royle kind of is obviously it's my name mixed together, but also it's a connection to royalty in the sense that the book is about showing that we live lives better than kings. That's kind of the concept. Now, I know you won't all agree with that completely, but I think when you look at it from this angle, you'll see what I mean. On top of all this, we have a much longer life expectancy mixed with our better living standards. So with all that added together, I definitely think the statement that I live a better and more fulfilled life than any king at any point in the history of mankind isn't that unrealistic. Obviously I can't prove this, but it's just my opinion. And thanks to modern technology, revolutionary societal models, we have the ability to live the best kind of lives, since we have more control over our destinies than anybody else would have had. If you were a serf, if you were a peasant, you were probably told where to work, you were told what to do, whereas we are not really ever told. We decide it by ourselves what jobs we do, where we live, where we travel to. It's all within our own autonomy. However, just because I believe we can live a life better than the king doesn't mean that everybody does, due to our personal choices a lot of the time. So, for example, if you choose to eat poor food excessively, you will become obese, for example, and then you will suffer from health issues, and then you definitely won't live the most fantastic life. Or you become depressed because of your weight problem, etc., etc. So it's not guaranteed that you will live this kind of a life, but it's possible, and that's why this book's been written to kind of outline how you can avoid it. So I mean, it's kind of very basic things. It's like, avoid alcohol to excess, avoid tobacco, avoid gambling, avoid these kind of vices, and then you definitely have the ability to enjoy the virtues of living a life as good as a king, if not better. Definitely, this is the core idea in the book. So yeah, this volume will break down the fundamentals of living a fantastic life, but revealing the habits, mindsets, and principles we all need to be fulfilled and successful within ourselves and the world around us. Kind of a big statement, but I think a lot of that is true. I'll probably deliver on most of that in the book. So that's, I think, a very good explanation of the first introductory topic, that we live lives good as kings. And I hope you kind of understand the concept more or less. So yeah, thanks for listening.
Get your copy of The Royal Mindset by using the link below.